All right, let's talk about consulting. It's got to be one of the most misunderstood services out there in the business world. Is it some kind of secret weapon for success, or is it just, really expensive advice? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down, what it actually solves, and maybe even more importantly, what it doesn't.
So when you hear the word consultant, what pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's one of two things. On one side, you've got this idea of a superhero who just swoops in and magically fixes a totally broken company. And on the other side, there's the stereotype of someone who just shows up with a bunch of complicated theories, a mountain of slides, and a ton of buzzwords without actually changing a thing.
But here's the thing. The truth is, neither of those extremes really gets it right, not even close. The real value of consulting is found somewhere much more practical, and honestly, much more collaborative.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. What are the tangible, real-world problems that a good consultant is actually supposed to fix?
First and foremost, consulting brings clarity. You see, businesses, they often hit this point where things just get messy. They feel stuck, completely overwhelmed, and they're not even sure what the real problem is anymore. So a consultant's number one job is to step right into that chaos and start building some structure.
So how do they actually do that? It's not magic, it's really a methodical process. It's about taking these huge, tangled-up problems and breaking them down into smaller, manageable pieces. It's about digging past the obvious symptoms to find out what's really causing the pain. And it's about seeing the blind spots that people inside the company are just too close to the action to notice. It all comes down to answering one simple but powerful question: what is really going on here?
Okay, so once you have that clarity, what's next? Well, you need direction. And look, a good strategy isn't about having 1,000 brilliant new ideas. In fact, a lot of the time, it's the total opposite. It's about having the focus to make a few great choices and, maybe most importantly, learning to say no to all the other good ideas that are just distractions. And this really boils down to a few key things. First, setting goals that you can actually achieve, not just some pie-in-the-sky dream. Second, figuring out the one or two initiatives that will have the biggest impact and pouring all your energy into those. And third, and this one is so critical, it's about getting the entire leadership team on the same page, rowing in the same direction. Because without that alignment, even the world's best strategy is going to fall flat.
Now, this next one might be the most underrated part of consulting, but it's where the real lasting value is: building systems. Think about it. When a small business starts to grow, all those informal habits that used to work just fine, they start to break down. The goal is to turn those chaotic habits into formal, repeatable systems that can actually scale with the business.
And what does that look like in the real world? Well, we're talking about things like repeatable workflows, so you know tasks are getting done right every single time. We're talking scalable operational models, solid financial frameworks, and clear reporting structures, so you actually know what's going on. Ideas are fantastic, but it's the systems that you build that truly last.
And building on that idea of systems, you get operational efficiency. Now, this isn't about trying to make people work harder or put in longer hours. No way. It's about working smarter. It means taking a hard look at how work actually flows, how resources get used, and how decisions get made, and in finding ways to make all of it cleaner, smoother, and just plain better. As businesses grow, especially small and medium-sized ones, they suddenly find themselves in a whole new world of regulations and risk. This is a huge, huge area where consultants add value. They help companies navigate all the tricky requirements, build the proper controls, and lower their exposure to all kinds of risks, legal, financial, you name it. It's really about building a solid foundation for growth.
And finally, there's the simple power of a fresh pair of eyes. An outside consultant can give you that brutally honest feedback that people on the inside might be too scared to say. But it's more than just advice. A good consultant also brings accountability to the table. They help set timelines and milestones to make absolutely sure that all those great plans actually turn into action.
This quote right here, this is the pivot point of our whole conversation. Because a consultant can create the most brilliant strategy you've ever seen, but if it just ends up sitting in a binder on a shelf, it's completely worthless. And this is where we need to shift gears, from what consulting gives you to what it demands from you.
Which brings us to a really crucial part of this. We got to talk about the hard truths. This is all about setting realistic expectations, because here are the things that consulting all on its own simply cannot fix.
So here's the bottom line.
A consultant can provide a perfect roadmap, but they can't force a bad leader to make good decisions. They can't instill discipline in a team that just doesn't have it. That has to come from within. And they certainly can't single-handedly fix a deep-seated toxic company culture. Culture is built from 1,000 tiny actions every single day, and if the team isn't on board, no plan is going to stick. And if a business is just looking for a magic button, some kind of shortcut to avoid the hard work, that's a total fantasy. Consulting can be an accelerator, but it's not a replacement for effort. And at the end of the day, if a company fundamentally refuses to change, no consultant on earth can save it.
So if a consultant can't just magically fix these things, how does real change ever happen? Well, the answer is simple. It's not a service, it's a partnership. Let's look at how a firm like Dicalo Consulting Group, or DCG, actually puts this idea into practice.
Now, DCG is a great example because their whole approach is grounded in practical, hands-on problem solving, not just theory. They work with small and medium-sized businesses that are hitting those classic growing pains. The finances are a mess, operations are chaotic, compliance is getting scary. Their focus is all about implementation.
And here's their game plan. It's a clear path from idea to action. First, they help create plans that are actually actionable, not just vague goals. Second, they build those lasting systems we were talking about. Then they tackle risk and compliance. And finally, and this is the most important part, they work to drive ownership and accountability inside the client's own team.
And this right here really sums up the whole relationship. It's a two-way street. The consultant's job to provide the clarity, the structure, the systems, basically the what and the how. But the client's role is absolutely non-negotiable. They have to bring the commitment to actually do the work, the discipline to stick with it, and the will to see it through. Real results only ever happen when both sides show up and deliver.
So, when you put it all together, that brings us to the real question we should be asking ourselves when we think about hiring a consultant.
I just love this analogy because it's so simple, and it's so true. A consultant can draw you the most perfect detailed map to get you exactly where you want to go. But they can't get in the driver's seat and drive the car for you. The client has to be the one to take the wheel.
And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. Consulting doesn't fix businesses. The people inside the business do. What consulting does is give those people the tools they need to succeed. The clarity to see the path forward, the systems to make the journey smoother, and the accountability to make sure they stay on course.
So you see, we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. The question we should be asking isn't, does consulting work?
The real question, the one you have to ask yourself, is this: are you ready to act on what consulting reveals? As a leader, as a team, are you actually prepared to do the hard work that the roadmap is going to show you? Because at the end of the day, that's it. That's where the real transformation